Today's lecture is going to focus on the concept of whitewashing and how U.S. history has been built on this concept of whitewashing. The story that we're going to get into, how it's done at an early age, is Dr. King's story. But before we get into that, I wanted to show you that whitewashing just doesn't happen to African American historical figures like Dr. King. It also happens with white historical figures. But when they do it with white figures, they do it to make somebody look great or intelligent or like brilliant or bringing civilization to anybody that is non-white. And of course, the famous example of this is Christopher Columbus' story, which you learned about with Adam Ruins Everything. This false narrative that only Christopher knew the world was round. That's just not true. Everybody knew the world was round thanks to Egypt and West African empires. West Africa had actually been trading with South America for centuries before Europe even knew that there was another world out there. Here's another prime example of this whitewashing of history. You see this picture in your textbooks, right? There's Christopher Columbus coming to like save the Native Americans, right? And like the Native Americans are being portrayed as if they're savages. And how do you know that? Because they're not wearing clothes, right? While the Europeans are wearing these like elegant clothes, which was definitely not the case, right? And also you see like Native Americans bringing Europeans all their prized possessions, their jewelry, their gold, their wealth, as if they want this conquering to happen. And if you look too at the top right of the art, you'll see women running around naked. Like if it wasn't for Europe, there would be people running around naked all throughout the U.S. This is another classic picture that you have seen in your textbook since middle school, and it's Christopher Columbus coming to the New World. There he is in maroon, which of course is the color of royalty in European culture. And there he is leading everybody, right? And of course, leading in Christianity. Like the reason why he came here is for God, which we know is just not true, right? I mean, he yelled out Los Indos and wrote about how beautiful the Native American people were in his journal, but he literally thought he landed in India. Nope, you landed in the Bahamas. And he wrote about how he was going to commit mass genocide and rape and pillage the Native American people, which is not Christian at all, right? Thou shalt not kill is a commandment. So it had nothing to do with Christianity, but it's this false portrayal of it. You also see again in this picture how Europeans look like they're the bringers of civilization, and Native Americans are uncivilized. And the way they do that, of course, is by stripping off their clothes or putting them in trees. If you look to the trees, you'll see as if they're almost like animalistic-like, right? Like almost if they're animal-like. And it's done on purpose. It's done to whitewash history and to create white supremacy in our culture. Right? The other famous story you've learned about, of course, is Captain Smith, right? So there's his portrayal, there's his image, and there's his false narrative that even Disney took off with, that him and Pocahontas had a thing. He wrote about it in his journal that Pocahontas saved his life. Totally not true, right? Historians researched, when they researched his story, they found out that he lied all the time, right? He was saved by all these different princesses from all these different countries, which is just not true. And he never would have even met Pocahontas. But even in the second movie of Pocahontas by Disney, and when they finally get the story that Pocahontas married John Roth and not Captain Smith, they still portray John Roth as being something that he wasn't, right? Like this big, masculine, blonde hair, blue-eyed man, right? Very Aryan race looking, very white supremacist ideology of what the perfect white guy would look like. And that is an example of whitewashing, right? And of course, with Pocahontas, she would be light in complexion because with whitewashing, there will be this creation of colorism, which we'll get into later on in the semester. You also see images like this in your textbook, a very famous artwork of Pocahontas. And of course, again, you see the whitewashing of it because look at her, even though she is embracing European culture, there you see with the dress, she's also showing her shoulder like in a sexual way, right? As if she's a savage, like a savage that has to be, controlled because she's so like sexual or sexualized. And so it would be the white European culture that will save Pocahontas, which is just crazy racist and whitewashing, right? So what we learn with whitewashing is done on purpose in U.S. history to create an identity based on whiteness. And if you are not white, then you are part of this concept of the other. And if you are part of the other, your diversity, your culture, your language is going to be ignored. And if it's going to be addressed, it's going to be addressed in that of whiteness, like what you see with Europeans and Native Americans, right? You also learn that this history is used by schools, and it actually socializes people into the concept of what is white, and what is white based on who they are, which has huge psychological impacts on people. And, because socialization has these unspoken rules that we don't talk about in society. An example of this would be the study where if you take white children and black children at the age of 5, white children do not know that they're white. They have no concept of race. And the reason why they have no concept of race is because they haven't had to. Unfortunately, African American children by the age of 5 know that they're black, right? And have to have this identity based on blackness that is forced upon them based on this identity of white culture and whitewashing. White children, don't realize that they are white until the age of 12. That conceptual understanding of what it means to be white, or the impacts it is to be white, until 12, right? So African Americans, kindergarten, have already learned those hard lessons, and white kids have until 7th grade or until they're 12. Totally unfair, but totally different outcomes psychologically, and where your brain is developed based on your age, right? So that's an impact of whitewashing.